All right, as always, ignore the hair. I'm gonna try to do another take of where I'm not. Oh, is that good? Yeah. No, I'm gonna try to do another take where I don't do any cuts and I get everything just in one cut from start to finish. Dude, the Orlando Magic have been a such a disappointing team, and I know it's such an I don't want to say oversaturated because whatever, but we've been talking about it. And when I say we, I mean like YouTube in general. Everybody who's talking about basketball is talking about how disappointing the Magic have been. And honestly, I'm gonna jump on that train with them. The Orlando Magic not only were supposed to be such a good team in the East this season, but we're looking at a year where, as I say over and over again, is such a weak Eastern Conference. Like Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs. These are all players who I wanted to take that leap. And when I was looking at their team a couple years ago, I always wanted Paolo to hit that all-star and superstar level. And seeing Paolo over the years become a better player, especially in the early years, was so fun to watch because I felt like I was just watching someone who I'm not gonna say I seen him in college, but I just had such high expectations for what he had to offer really for the league. And with the fact, I'm a Heat fan, but I'm just in general, I've always been a Florida fan as a whole. So like any team that's in Florida, of course, when there's a rivalry between Miami and Orlando, I'm always gonna go for Miami. But Orlando's part of it, right? They're middle of Florida, and I do love Orlando. Their history, their jerseys, when they're tough. And so I've just always loved that team, and I've always wanted them to have a competitive year. My what it's like some of my top five, sorry, favorite players of all time is double sleeve Dwight Howard in the Magic. And it was so fun to watch that team. And of course, I'm going off of clips, but long story short, I love the Magic. And the fact that I have to see them this year be so disappointing. I mean, they got Desmond Bain to work on their weaknesses. A couple years ago, when we knew their biggest weaknesses were defense and three-point shooting, they got KCP. And to me, that was an amazing low risk, low reward scenario because KCP was getting paid a decent amount, but he was a 3 and D guy. And he was the fifth option in the Nuggets roster, which just felt like he was going to be in the fifth option in the Magic roster. And you got to see how good that team was for the Nuggets, right? And so when he came to Orlando, I'm thinking they need 3-point shooting, he's got it. And they need defense, he's got it. I understand he's more on the older side, but he's still that guy where it's like he's not going to ask for a max extension or anything like that. He's not asking for crazy, crazy money. So to add him onto an Orlando Magic team that needed both defense and offense was just great because it felt like they were not fixing and patching their holes, but they were putting a little bit of a band aid on it, right? Like it kind of helped them a little bit. And then he went into that season not having a good 3-point shooting year. And his defense had definitely taken a step back. And then it's like, damn. So next season, they go for Desmond Bain. Overpaid? Yes. But there weren't many players at that point who can bring what he had to offer and what they needed so desperately, which is a 3-point shooting. Because Lord knows Franz Wagner's 3-point shooting just fell off the face of the earth. And excuse me, that's the point. That's the part of their offense they needed the most. With Paolo, you want to give him the most amount of space as possible. So when you give him the ball, and let him operate in the paint, knowing there's a shooter outside like Desmond Bain, that's great for his offense. And for your offense as a whole, it gets him more free flow and you can just get a normal kick out. And it just hasn't been like that. Desmond Bain had a slow start to the season. And while he has picked it back up recently, it's just disappointing as a whole. I mean, their offense just isn't what you were hoping for. And defensively, I was expecting more. And it just sucks that their 3-point shooting and their offense just seems so stagnant. And the biggest issue of it all, which I can never blame a team for, besides the Clippers, is just injuries. Like they have been injury prone. We've seen it last season. They were not a very injury free. I mean, they just constantly had injuries with Paolo, with Franz. I don't remember what two players it was, but there were two players that were pretty big. I think it was it Paolo and Jalen Suggs, who like at this point of the season had a combined 50 games. About like 25, was it 50 games? It was something like that. A crazy stat saying that they did not play that many minutes together. I don't remember the last time we saw a full healthy Orlando Magic roster. And that says something because they're not vets. They're not old players who have a lot of reps under them. They're just young players who can get injured often. And that sucks. That's not a recipe for success. And while your personnel and your players may not be the issue when it comes to their skill sets, because you have been, as a GM, like I can never blame the GM. You can blame their head coach, like how some of their fans have been doing, but their GM I can't blame. I feel like he's done a pretty good job trying to piece together what he can do with the amount of money that they have. But it's hard to predict injuries. And with the Clippers, it's one thing, and I bring it up because it's like you can predict that James Harden, Kawhi Leonard are going to get injured. So when you bring more players like Chris Paul and Bradley Beal, John Collins, like it was a great team, and Brook Lopez, but it's also like you expected them to get injured every single season. Same thing with with 76ers. You bring in Paul George and you know he's going to get injured. So how often do you have him for? So with Orlando, you didn't see that. You didn't expect Desmond Bane to come in and miss these amount of threes and shots and not be as efficient. And you also can't always expect that your young players are getting injured as often as they are, unless you're called Zion. So it sucks because in this stage of Orlando Magic's rebuild, right? Because now they're buying in, they're trying to they're contending. It sucks because you don't want that to be the issue. It's like the roster isn't a bad construction. It's just the fact that you don't get these players to full potential. And now with extensions and money going to be coming up, you're worrying about who are you going to pay? Because now these players are not going to be on their rookie contracts. They're getting paid big bucks. Paolo and Franz are going to get paid big bucks. And you have this core to where you got to really look back and say, hey, this is going to be the core moving forward, but what are we going to do financially? Because it's not a cheap roster. And when you're talking about, outside of just their players, right, and their coach and the GM, let's look at the standings. Because of how weak the East is, they can jump up to 4th in a couple of days, but at the same time, they can also drop to like playing in a couple of days, and that's not where you want to be. You're looking at the Eastern Conference having the Detroit Pistons, who have been great so far. I'm not going to tell you that they've been bad. They've been great. But then you have like teams like the Raptors who are doing really good, and they haven't made like significant changes in their roster. And you have other teams like even the Hawks, the Bulls and the Magic are neck to neck. The Bulls, the Josh Giddey led Bulls, and it's not a shot to the Bulls, it's just a shot to Orlando. Orlando's trying to contend in a weak Eastern Conference. The Bulls are not. They're just okay with being mediocre. They have Kobe White, Josh Giddey. They have these players who like they can go crazy, but it's not a team. When you're looking at the position that both teams are in right now, and you're looking at the Bulls, how incompetent the GM is in the front office is not the GM, the front office as a whole, where they just deny rebuilding, and they don't want to rebuild, and they don't want to sell. They're probably not going to make a single move in the offseason when they most definitely should trade Nikola Vucevic. They won't probably do anything. That's the team that the Magic are competing with for a playoff spot. Like that, you're a game in front of Chicago. That's not where you want to be. And you can always, like, this is the problem with a lot of, which the NBA recently has been obviously riddled with injuries across the league. But the biggest problem is we're looking at a team and a league now to where a lot of teams with their personnel and their full roster, you think that's a good NBA team. But you look at how often their injuries happen, and you're like, damn, how, like, can I really expect them to be fully healthy for the playoffs? And now that's taken a huge, it's really strongly taken into account when you're building a team. Because on paper, you can have a great team, but if they're just injured, it's over. And what are you going to do? You have to take that into account when you're building a team, because you don't want injuries to be the reason why you can't make it. You can always be like, oh, it's good, but it's just the injuries. If we just have a single year where we're good with injuries, now that you have to take it into account. Now when you trade for someone, you got to say, hey, they're probably going to get injured, like Anthony Davis. And that's why the trade market isn't really open for him, because it's like he's a great player when he's playing, but when is he playing? Look at the list of the amount of times he's been injured since he joined the Mavs. That February 1st, 2025 was when the Anthony Davis and the Luka trade happened. And he's had like more than a handful. He's had like almost 10 injuries since then. It's been less than a year. Calf, wrist, fit, like everything you can think of, he's had it. And it sucks because now the Mavs have to move off of it because they know it's a bad trade. But it's one of those things where now everybody's like, we should have known AD was not going to be healthy. And that's the problem. And so now with the Magic, you get, people in the Magic who has that label of like, hey, he can get injured pretty often. but because they're so young, they're not known for being injured. And you don't want to hit that point to where you're known for being injured, like players like Paul George, AD. Not that, of course, they're great players, but when you hit a point that you miss so many games, unfortunately, your injury history gets taken into account. If you were to trade for Steph Curry, you'd be looking at like, not yeah, he's super old, but you're viewing what he brings to the table and its immediate impact. But if you look at a Kyrie Irving, even Kyrie, for example, he not that he always gets injured, or I don't know. I guess Kyrie's like a decent example, but like you take into account like Kyrie, like okay, he's older and he does get injured a little bit more often than like a Steph Curry type of build, and that's what makes him more valuable. Of course, the skill set is there. I'm not saying that Steph and Kyrie are on a different, like they're on the same level of skill, but the point that I'm trying to make is injuries now take a lot more effect when it comes to building a team than ever before. And now when it comes to a team like the Magic, who have rebuilt pretty well, like honestly, they've rebuilt pretty well. Now they get the back end of it because it's like, bro, our players are young. The team's built pretty decently. Of course, there's still a lot of things they got to work on, but it sucks because the reason why they're not able to compete the way they want to is because of injuries. A team like Detroit had a decent rebuild with Cade and Jalen Duren, but I'm not gonna tell you they had the best rebuild. Yet, because of the fact that, of course, they have a Cade Cunningham type of player, but they've had healthy players, it's been great. And a player like Jaden Ivey, who you look at and you're like, hey, he's a good prospect. I like the way he plays and all that stuff. Now you got to look at it as like, if you're going to trade him away, the other team has to acknowledge the fact that he's going to get injured. And that's just, it's a rant, but it's really like, it's crazy how much we've come when it comes to the injuries portion of it. And it sucks that the Magic had to deal with the injury side of young players because you don't get that too much. I mean, Oklahoma's not dealing with it. So a team who's just struggling so much defensively and offensively, and they're working their way up. But this season overall, for the Magic, I don't know if you want to call it. I don't want to say it's been a horrible season player wise, even though they've been lacking in like different spots of the floor. But it's the only way I can really tell you that I don't like this team completely is by seeing a full team, like a full healthy lineup, and I don't know when we're gonna get that. So we just gotta wait and see when we get to actually visualize how the whole team plays. Because if they come out with the five, like the full starting lineup, and they're really healthy and they're playing great, then my perspective is gonna change. But it just fully depends on how often they get injured. And of course, if Franz Wagner's 3-point shots, goes in a lot more than they are right now. But if Desmond Bane drains his threes as much as I would hope for him to, and if Franz Wagner can at least tweak it to like the low 30s at least, we're looking at a different team. And of course, the fact that they got to stay healthy. But only time will tell. And with Anthony Black and his progression and Paolo trying to like do as much as he can with the spacing he has, there's really nothing I can really say when it comes to what I think of this team besides they're just so injured at such a young age that it's hard for me to really grasp how good they are and what their potential really is. So we don't know if we're only two role players away from a genuine championship contender or if we're a full another superstar away from a championship contender. Because at the end of the day, you rebuild for a championship. So I don't know if we're a reliant superstar away when it comes to injuries, or if we're a couple role players and one healthy playoff run away. But only time will tell. But I appreciate you guys watching. If this video is all over the place, because I'm trying to do at least once a week, I'm trying to post a video where I don't do any cuts. So I'm gonna keep working on it. Speech will get better. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you want to watch more basketball content, I'm posting 3 to 4 times a week. Please subscribe. Hit the like if you like the video. If you want to support, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about the Magic. If you guys think they're a contender, if you think they gotta blow it up early, I don't know. But let me know. I appreciate you guys. Have a good one. Peace.